Hello, hello, hello. It's Knits for Sanity and welcome to my channel. This is a WIP and chat. WIP stands for work in progress, so grab whatever project or chore or hobby it is that you are currently working on and let me just chat at you for a little while, keep you company. If this is your first time joining me, thank you so much for stopping by. I'm so happy you are here. And if you've been with me before, thanks for coming back. I love meeting up with my friends every week. So for those of you who have been around for a while, you may be looking at my setup going, this looks very interesting, Knits for Sanity. You are using a kit drill pin. You're using a kit drill tray. You have no washi. What is going on? Like, well, I will very briefly tell you, I am in the middle of creating a series for absolute beginners in the diamond painting world. And by absolute beginner, I actually mean those people who have never ever diamond painted before and are completely new to the hobby, as well as those who, like myself, may have started diamond painting at one time, but for whatever reason, they ended up having to just stop. Something about the process was distasteful and they quit diamond painting, which is what happened to me. And I've spoken about that months ago in other videos. So I wanted to create a series where I went through step by step from the unboxing to how you actually fill in a diamond painting and just expose people to how you can do this whole process and how you can do it using just the supplies that you receive in your diamond painting kit. I chose to do a Diamond Art Club kit. A couple of reasons. I am not an affiliate with the company, but I do know that it's a quality product and it's widely accessible for people. So I chose a Diamond Art Club kit. They also have these really cute little tiny ones, which are great beginner pieces. And so that is why you see me doing this. As for the Oscar the Grouch selection, I loved Oscar the Grouch as a kid, Oscar and Slimy. I loved that he had a pet. I thought that was so cool. My other favorite Sesame Street character was Prairie Dawn. I don't know if any of you remember Prairie Dawn. She was a 1980s character that was on Sesame Street, and she was phased out probably around 1990. I don't even know. I mean, by the time she was done on the show, I think I was done watching the show. So that also dates me. But I have not been shy about sharing my age on my channel either. So I am currently trying to do this project only using the supplies that I have received in the kit. And guys, I gotta tell you, this is actually kind of hard. I kind of forgot just how uncomfortable these pins are. And of course, static is a huge issue, which is why you see drills kind of spilled all over right now. Yeah, keep this in mind. For those who are just diamond painting, just getting started with this, and if you are just using the kit supplies, this is kind of a chore in some ways. Not bad. Like, I did my first Diamond Art Club kit using only what I was given. I did it exactly like this, which is why I thought it was so important to return to that. And I still loved the experience. And my first painting was 45 by 45, maybe. I mean, it was not a 9" by 9". It was about twice the size of this. Because I think it was a 45 by 45 centimeter painting, something right around that. But I did the whole thing just like this. This was all that I had for my drill pen. This was all that I had for my drill tray. I didn't have washi tape. I just moved back a section of my plastic as I went, and that's how I filled it in. That's how I did it. So I wanted to return to that for doing this particular series. So that is what I'm doing right now. And that will not be released till I have the whole thing completely done. But that is why I am working on the painting like this, and that's just kind of what's going on. So that's what's happening right now in the diamond painting part of my channel here. But now this is a WIP Chat. And part of my WIP Chats is I do like to do something called a community question, which if you are brand new here and you don't know what that is, one of the reasons why I wanted to start a YouTube channel was I wanted to get to know the community a little bit better, try and develop some relationships with people. I kind of live in the middle of nowhere. I don't get out much. And I just thought this would be a good way to try and connect with others that share similar hobbies and interests as I do, or people who maybe are just for whatever reason fascinated with the life of a mother who lives in the middle of nowhere and has 4 children. Cool. So anyway, in an effort to further build this idea of community, I like to ask a community question most weeks when I am doing a WIP Chat. The community question is not meant to be an invasive or deeply personal question. It's meant to be just a very general getting to know you question. And I encourage you to write your answer in the comments and then take a few minutes and look through what other people have written as well. You know, make a new friend maybe. So this week's question is going right along the lines of what I've already answered. And that is, what was your favorite Sesame Street character when you were a kid? Or tell me if you never watched Sesame Street as a kid. I would find both things just as interesting. So if you could let me know in the comments below, I'd really appreciate it. Like I told you, my favorite Sesame Street characters as a child were Oscar the Grouch and Prairie Dawn. I loved Oscar's attitude. I just loved that sarcastic, kind of dark for, you know, preschool age kid attitude. I loved it. I just loved it. And I really did love that he had a pet. I thought that was really cool. And his pet wasn't much better than my pet, which was a goldfish. So, you know, we both kind of had crappy pets. Although that goldfish, I'll have you know, his name was Bert, and he lived all the way until I was in college. It was just a little feeder fish that I won for free at a local supermarket, like, I don't know, some kind of promotional thing that they had going on. Kids could go in and play little games and stuff, and that's how I got this goldfish. And he lived for a very long time. I think I received him when I was about 4, and he probably died when I was about 20. So he had a really good long life as a feeder fish. And then my other favorite character, like I've already talked about, was Prairie Dawn. I just thought Prairie Dawn was really cool. In fact, I thought she was so cool that when I got my first Cabbage Patch doll when I was 4 for that Christmas, I named the doll Prairie Dawn, which was far superior to the name she came with, which was something like, what was it? Something, I don't even remember. It was horrible. It'll come to me. It'll come to me. I don't know if it'll come to me while I'm still doing this WIP Chat, but it will come to me. And I may have actually shared what her name was back in December when I was doing my, like everyday Advent, when I was diamond painting and I'd share different Christmas stories every day. I may have shared her name then. It was something with lettuce. And maybe, anyway. But I named her Prairie Dawn. So there you go. All right, guys. So I know what you're all wondering. Actually, you're probably not. But how was the weekend of wrestling? I know that's what you're all thinking about, isn't it? That's what you're all asking. Like, oh, Knits for Sanity, please fill us in. How did the weekend of wrestling go? If this is your first time, you should be aware that in this household, I have a daughter who is a wrestling fanatic. And by wrestling, I do not mean WWE wrestling. I mean like actual high school, college wrestling. What my daughter considers to be real wrestling. And I'm not going to disagree with her. I do feel like the entertainment wrestling, I am not knocking what they do because it still takes definite athleticism and talent. But it is a performance versus an actual sport where you don't know the end result and there are, very defined rules. etc., etc. And this past weekend was, for her, what was probably better than if I told her we were going to Disney World. We had our high school individual state finals event, which I talked about what that is in my last WIP Chat. In addition, it was also the Big Ten Wrestling Championship, which I talked about that in my last WIP Chat, and we had tickets to both of those. For high school, we were going to see, we only had one kid make it to state this year, which was rather anticipated. We had a very young high school team this year. My daughter is a manager / junior coach of the high school team and has been for 3 years now. She's only in the 7th grade, so she's not actually at an age yet. You know, she's not in high school herself, but she has served in this role now for quite a few years, and she loves it. But this year was the youngest team that we've had in a while. And what I mean by that is we had a lot of 9th graders, a lot of freshmen on the team. In addition, we had a lot of kids who had never wrestled before join the team this year. And this isn't a bad thing, especially when several of those kids proved to be very talented. What that means is, you know, in another year or two, when those kids are a little bit older, you know, when they get to be juniors, seniors, depending on the other kids who come in over the coming years, the team could be phenomenal. So it was kind of like a starting over year. We lost a lot of long-term wrestlers over the last couple of years, and this year we only had one senior left on the team who was able to compete, and he is the one who did end up going to individual state this past weekend. He did very, very well. While he was, of course, hoping to come in first, he placed 3rd, which I think is fantastic, and I am so proud of him, and he really has every reason to be hopefully tickled and thrilled with his result. Last year he had placed 7th, so placing 3rd this year is clearly substantially better than what he has performed at before. And it shows growth on his part, which is great because next year he actually will be wrestling in college at a NAIA school, I believe is what the conference is called. So, you know, he has more room to grow, and Veda and I are super excited to watch him continue in wrestling and in life. You know, I get to know these kids really, really well. Ian is his name, and my daughter actually was on the same youth club team with him when she was little and when he was younger. So, I mean, I've known him for a lot of years now, and it's really cool to watch these kids grow up and see what they end up doing. So we, however, were only at the high school state individual final on Friday because the Big Ten championship took place Saturday and Sunday. And while she was really torn about not getting to see Ian do his final bouts on Saturday, Ian himself spoke with Veda and, you know, said, hey, look, you have tickets to the Big Ten. Like, seriously, go to that. That'll be so much better. And I'm not done wrestling. You can still watch me wrestle in college next year. So once she got essentially the okay from him, then she was cool with it. So that is what we did. So Friday we did watch him. Unfortunately, because of how it works with brackets and stuff, the last time we saw him wrestle for high school was a loss. But that's all right, because then we did watch him the next day through live stream, and then we did see him take 3rd that way. So that was really cool. All right, but now let's talk about some of the other aspects of the weekend. So first, this meant traveling to the other side of the state and staying in a hotel for 3 nights. And I talked about how I am not like super gung-ho about hotel stays. Like, I'm just, it's kind of not my thing. I like being home. I love to travel. I'm just not real in love with sleeping somewhere else. But the hotel itself actually was pretty nice. It was a newer hotel, which kind of helps with some of my weird anxieties too. We got to the hotel just fine on Thursday. No trouble finding it. It was kind of an eye-opening experience for my daughter. So if you're not aware, we live very much in the middle of nowhere. We have a teeny tiny little nothing of a house for 6 people and 2 cats and a dog, which, by the way, if you turn the volume up and you hear snoring, that is my bulldog sleeping in the other room. Okay, so I have had people comment, Jade from Jaded Gym Shop, in fact, has been like, am I crazy or do I hear snoring in the background? No, lady, you are not crazy. That is snoring in the background. That is my bulldog snoring away, sleeping as blissfully as can be at present. So Thursday night, we did get there just fine, but where we had to get off from the interstate was just west of what is the wealthiest part of Michigan, an area called Farmington Hills. So we get off from the interstate and we're driving down this major road and we have to go like 9 miles south. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, it is dark out, but the houses were massive. Just these enormous houses. The type of thing that I know my daughter has never seen in her life. I mean, she's never seen anything like this. So I just said, hey, Veda, have you noticed the houses around here? And she's like, these are houses? I said, yes. I said, they're really, really big. She's like, oh, I guess I haven't really been noticing. And I think she was kind of just not really paying attention, but then seeing these large buildings, assuming that they weren't houses, that they were something else. And then almost immediately after we had that exchange, we passed by one of these just enormous, just massive houses. And these are houses that are still in subdivisions, which I just don't understand. It's like, why would you choose to have a house that's 5,000 square feet when you could have a house that's 2,000 square feet and then that much more yard? Like, but I guess that's me now living out in the middle of nowhere and having a teeny tiny house that I wish could be like at least 30% larger than what it is. That would be really, really helpful. But I also have several acres of land. But we drove past this massive house and my daughter almost lost it. She was just totally blown away. She just kept like, that's a house? That's a house? And she says, how many people live there? And I said, honestly, it's probably about a family of 4. And she's like, what? What? I said, yeah, probably. She just could not get over it. She was totally blown away, but she's never seen anything like it in her life. And now I'm thinking maybe it's good that it wasn't daylight when we were over there, because I think she probably literally would have passed out had she'd seen these places in daylight and really gotten a true scope of just how massive these homes are. So yeah, that was a very eye-opening experience for her. She absolutely sees no reason why any human should ever have a house that large. And I'm going to be honest, I agree with her. I really do. Like I said, our house is admittedly too small. Now, when you compare it to what the rest of the world has, well, okay, no. When you compare it to what is considered common within our country, yeah, our house is really too small for the size of our family. But, we make it work. It's what we have. It's what we can afford, and that's okay. And like I said, we have several acres of land that my children have grown up on. And that's the other thing that my kids really struggle with. when we go into the city now is they see these homes and they're so close together with these teeny tiny yards. And my kids are just, when they're in their minds, it's like, how can people live like this? Which is funny to me. So that was experience number 1. Then experience number 2 was not nearly as cool. In fact, it was one of the more hair-raising experiences of my entire life. So if you've been following along, you will know that back in January, my daughter and I, after a Saturday wrestling tournament, traveled across the state because of a winter storm that was coming. And it was her birthday weekend, and we had tickets to go watch University of Michigan wrestle. And I really didn't want her to miss that on her birthday weekend. So I got us a hotel. And so right after this wrestling tournament, we drove across the state so that we would be there the next morning already. Well, this was horrible weather. I mean, it was a horrible winter storm until we got just to the west side of Lansing, it's in the middle of the Lower Peninsula of Michigan, and it is the state capital. But the weather was horrible up until that point, just horrible. Okay. I have now been in even worse driving conditions than that. I had considered that to be the worst driving conditions that I had experienced, and that is somebody that has grown up in one of the absolute snowiest places in the United States. So when I say that it was like worst driving conditions, this should not be taken as a light statement. I am accustomed to snow at a rate of like 2 inches per hour of ice, and I have grown up learning to drive in this stuff. Well, I don't know if you saw in my community posts, I did put up Thursday night, I believe, and I talked about last time there was a winter storm that was supposed to be coming, and it was going to be hitting our area last Friday. And in my WIP Chat last week, I'm like, oh, but, no big deal for me, because Veda and I are going to be on the other side of the state. So it's going to be my husband and other children who, they might get like 4 to 6 inches of snow on Friday, but they'll be fine. It's 4 to 6 inches, which is considerable, but nothing major, blah, 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 whatever. Well, Thursday night after we got to the hotel, I checked the weather again, and they weren't going to get anything back at my house anymore, like just an inch or two. Oh no, it had all transferred to Southeast Michigan. And when I posted on the community page, there was a 10-inch prediction for where I was. By Friday morning, it was a 12-inch prediction. 12 inches of snow that was supposed to start falling by late Friday afternoon and continue till about 4 a.m. So about 12 inches over maybe 12 hours. So we are at the high school wrestling final and on Friday, and I am thinking about this storm that's coming, and I am feeling nervous because our hotel is not close by. Because the events were located in 2 different locations, one in Detroit and one in Ann Arbor, I found a hotel that was pretty much right in between both spots. So that made perfect sense, and it was only about a half-hour drive to either place. Whether we were going to Detroit or Ann Arbor, it was about half an hour either way. Excuse me. But that meant it was still 29 miles from Ford Field, which is where the high school wrestling finals were taking place, and our hotel. We finally left Ford Field. What time was it? I think it was right before 8 o'clock in the evening. And we walked outside, and I went, oh my word. Oh my word. The snow was coming down so heavy. I later learned that during that time frame that I was on the road, snow was falling at a rate of 2 to 3 inches per hour, which is a massive amount of snowfall. And then driving What I also discovered, I have been told this, but I have never lived this until this past weekend. The east side of the state, as far as snow removal, does a miserable job. Horrible. So we are getting snow at astounding rates. But yet for that 29-mile drive, I think Veda and I saw maybe 5 snow plows total. So what was happening is all of that snow was quickly accumulating on the interstate, and suddenly there are 6 inches of snow on the interstate that people are trying to get through. And it's still coming down. It was a nightmare. You know, I have a vehicle with all-wheel drive. Thank goodness I did. People who didn't were totally stranded. They were completely stuck on the interstate. They were not able to move. So there were cars all over the place. There were so many times where I would see tire tracks and someone had run right into a concrete barrier head on because they lost traction and whoop, ran right into a concrete barrier. It was awful. And, you know, I kept having this panic, realizing if we get stranded, there's nothing I can do. There's no one I can call. There's no one who could help us. You know, my only option is to get to the hotel. Like, I don't have any other choice here. We have to keep going. I have to make it to the hotel. There is nothing else that can be done. You know, I lost control of my vehicle a few times, but again, totally different coming from the west side of the state where I have a lot of experience with slipping and sliding and losing control briefly of my vehicle. And people on the east side of the state don't quite have that same level of experience. So I did my darndest to make sure that I always had ample space between me and anyone else traveling. Of course, there were no lanes anymore. It was just pretty much just try and travel over that interstate however possible. Like, technically, you know, there's like 4 lanes here somehow, some way. You're lucky if you're able to find 2 lanes to be able to travel on. It was so bad. It was so bad. And I just kept thinking, why is no one clearing the road? Why is no one clearing the road? They just don't have the resources on that side of the state. They just don't get that kind of snowfall. And that really is the main difference. So even in your wealthier areas like the Ann Arbor area, Washtenaw County, it was still just as messy, just as horrible as what it was in Detroit, because they so rarely see a snowfall like that they don't have the same number of plows. They don't stock salt or sand the way that we do on the west side of the state. They just don't have those resources. And being the end of the winter season, by March, a lot of the supplies that you do have are probably used up by then. Thinking of like salt and stuff. But in this case, what they needed were plows. They needed plows. They needed an army of plows out there just trying to move the snow that was accumulating so quickly. We did make it back to the hotel. I was very relieved when we made it. My daughter was very relieved when we made it. We were starving. One thing about arenas that I just find absolutely disgusting is, so Ford Field, we are there by, what time did we enter the field? 9 o'clock in the morning, or was it 8 o'clock in the morning? I don't even remember now. But you are in Ford Field for basically 12 hours, which means you will have to eat and drink, okay? I guess technically you don't need to eat. I mean, you could just sit there and not eat for 12 hours, but try and say that to a 13-year-old girl. Try and say that to most humans that, you know, you're going to go into this super busy, overwhelming environment with these massive flights of stairs going up and down to your seats and not eat. And of course, you're not allowed to bring any food or beverage into the arena. So the cost to buy our lunch, it was like $40 for lunch. And I'll tell you what we had. Each of us got one small personal pan pepperoni pizza and one soda or pop if you're a Midwest person. That was it. That was our lunch, and it was $40. And by the end of the day, we had purchased the pizzas, which again, they were not large pizzas. We each had a soda. And then later I got us each a little bitty ice cream cup, just a teeny tiny ice cream cup, and each of us a bottle of water that then we could refill. And then at the end of the day, I got us a single order of fries and another soda, a Sprite that we could share. And thank goodness I wasn't going to buy that. But I was smart enough to think ahead going, it could be a while before we get somewhere else to get food. So let's get something. But that's it. That's all that I purchased at the arena. And it was $100. And, you know, for those of you who have been following along, you know our financial situation. I mean, I had been saving up for this trip and everything. So, it's not like this totally broke us, but this, oh my God, the expense there. So by the time we made it back to our hotel, it was now after 9 o'clock. Oh, close to 9:30, I think, by the time we made it back to our hotel. And again, this is supposed to be a 30-minute drive, approximately 27 to 30 minutes. It's 29 miles, almost entirely over interstate. And it took almost 3 times the length before we made it back to our hotel. And there were no open restaurants in the area. There was nowhere that we could get food that was near the hotel. Everything was closed up by then, whether it was just because of normal hours of business operation or because they sent workers home, very wisely so, during a snowstorm. I am not sure. So then we were forced to, again, purchase exceedingly overpriced items from the hotel lobby store, which the selection, even worse than Ford Field. So my daughter on Friday night had some beef jerky and some crackers. And I also got for us a little microwavable thing of Chef Boyardee. And that was our dinner. Oh, and then we each got a bottle of iced tea. And that was our dinner Friday night. It was horrible. I was so stressed out, and I couldn't get a filling meal after all of that. And I was so sick of spending so much money for necessities. I had it. But guys, it did not end there. So then the next morning, the one thing that kept me going was the hotel buffet, the breakfast buffet that was available. We had it Friday morning, and it was fantastic. They had these breakfast sandwiches that Veda loved. You know, I really just like oatmeal from hotel breakfast buffets. So, I had oatmeal and coffee and milk, and that's what I had, but I thought it was great. You know, they had some raisins and brown sugar that you could put in your oatmeal, and it was wonderful. So the one thing that kind of kept me going Friday night was knowing that, okay, but tomorrow morning we'll be able to get a good breakfast. Well, my daughter goes down when I hopped in to take a shower, and she comes back up and she's like, Mom, there are no breakfast sandwiches. There's nothing. They just have some cereal. They don't even have waffle stuff out yet. They said that they're going to try and get waffle stuff out pretty soon, but they don't even have the waffle stuff out yet. There's nothing. And I said, well, what about oatmeal? Isn't there at least oatmeal? You can get oatmeal. That's filling. Mom, there's no oatmeal. I thought, what? What do you mean? It's just oatmeal. You know, you just prepare it, put it in a huge crock pot, and it's good. What do you mean there's no oatmeal even? She was not kidding. There was no oatmeal. We were down to, by the time I did get down there, they did have some waffle batter made, but like my daughter couldn't use it because the line to make a waffle was extraordinarily long because that was about the only thing you could eat. They had some dry cereal and they had skim milk and they had some yogurt cups, some Yoplait tiny yogurt cups that I can't stand because they're like so sweet and just, I think, nasty. And, oh, and then they had like little bitty brownie bites. I don't want that for breakfast. And that was it. That was it. So I ended up having a bowl of Cheerios with skim milk on it. And there wasn't like sugar or anything to sweeten this at all. So it was a bowl of Cheerios, plain Cheerios with skim milk on it. And I forced myself to eat one of the yogurt containers because that was my only protein option at all. There were no eggs. I mean, there was nothing with protein available. And I was still hungry and cranky and feeling very stressed. But I thought, that's okay. Today will be better. The Big Ten will be a ton of fun. We hop in the car. And I still don't have the ice scraper in my car because I think it must be in my husband's car. So we have to sit and we need to wait. And I have to go out there and push off mounds and mounds of snow. Oh, I think I have children coming home right now. Hold on just a minute. I will be right back. I am back. My lucky friends, you don't realize how long of a time period it has been. First, 2 of my children got home from school, and with them coming home, I thought, well, I may as well get ready myself to head out because I have to pick up my 3rd daughter from school. She does an after-school program on Wednesdays, Dungeons and Dragons after-school club that she does. So I have to pick her up from school on Wednesday. So I left and I went and I got her. And now I'm back home and I'm just trying to squeeze in just a little bit more of this WIP Chat before my son gets home. After my son arrives home, there's pretty much no hope of trying to get any kind of quality, quiet-ish time in to be able to do a WIP Chat. Which is why I just had him join me a couple of weeks ago during snow days. It was just easier, really. So anyway, I was talking about how Saturday morning I had to clean off the car using my hands because I did not have an ice brush or snow brush in my car at all because I think it is in my husband's vehicle. You'd think we'd own, multiples of that item, and yet for some reason we don't. And I never seem to have one when I really, truly need one. So I wiped down my car with my hands, and then we just had to sit and wait for the car to warm up. Fortunately, by Saturday morning, it was really sunny out. So it didn't take that long for the car to kind of melt away. And then we started to head out for the Big Ten Championship. But what just amazed me is how messy the roads still were the next morning. They were so messy. Over here on the west side of the state, by the time the storm is done, within a few hours, we got the roads pretty well cleaned up over here. The plows have been out now for several hours, and they are pretty gosh darn clean, especially when it is bright and sunny out. It's not like that on the other side of the state. The roads were still an absolute mess. I got on the interstate and it was just like 8 inches of slush on it was, so it still took quite a while to get to the Chrysler Center in Ann Arbor to see the Big Ten Championship. But we got there, hands down, the Chrysler Center is infinitely more appealing than Ford Field. And watching the Big Ten Championship was so much more enjoyable than watching high school state individual finals. Has nothing to do with the wrestling. The wrestling, I feel, is really very fantastic and super fun to watch for both events, okay? So it has nothing to do with the wrestling or the level of wrestling. It has everything to do with the platform. First, Ford Field parking is a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. And, I know this ahead of time. I have done this last year. I knew it was still going to be terrible. I had done some research and, everything is cashless now. So I didn't bother with getting a lot of cash. Last year, I couldn't use it anywhere anyway. But parking is expensive. It's like $20 to $30 to park in Detroit for an event. Unless you can happen to get into one of the Ford Field lots. Then it's like a set price of like $8 for parking. Huge difference. But especially for Friday, when there would be well over 1,100 wrestlers there, plus all their coaches who arrive before the general public, I knew there was no way I was going to get into a Ford Field lot. So, then you're driving around and they got streets shut down because of the amount of traffic coming in for Ford Field. It is chaos. It's like any major downtown in any major city. So then I'm driving around and finally I find a lot and I'm like, well, I guess we're just going to park here. I pull in and I noticed that everyone's handing the guy cash. So we go up to him and I said, I don't have cash. Your signs and everything say that I can pay online if you don't take credit card, here. And I didn't understand a word that this guy told me. I have no clue what he said, but he waves me in. I'm like, what is going on? But he does not give me a parking ticket. So I go in and I park and we hop out of the vehicle. I'm like, Veda, do you have any cash on you at all? She has $2. I'm looking and I'm digging through and I found $16. And I had like $1 or $2 in quarters. I think it was $3 coins, which were supposed to be saved as tooth fairy money for my son. That I found those and I pulled those out. So in the end, combined, we had $18. So I go up to the guy who is collecting money and handing out the parking tickets. And I say, look, I don't know how to do this online thing. I thought I could pay with a credit card somehow. That's what all the literature said. That's what the signs around here say. But I don't, it's not making sense. I have $18. Will you please just take $18? And another attendant is there and he's like, what, you need $2? I can give you $2. And then the attendant who was in charge and taking the money and handing out the parking tickets, he just hands me a parking ticket and he's like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. So, so we dealt with that. Fortunately, it was okay. Cause I thought too, somehow if he says no, because I'm $2 short, I have to somehow get out of this parking lot where the flow of traffic is only going into this parking lot. Oh, anyway, you don't have that at the Chrysler Center. Really, there's a lot of parking at the Chrysler Center. It's free parking, which is, an added benefit. So that's really nice. The other thing, Ford Field, the seats are so uncomfortable. They are all a hard plastic, which makes sense. It's a, large arena where they host things like indoor, like dirt bike rallies and stuff like that. So you need seats that, if need be, you can literally just hose down. But they're so uncomfortable. It's just misery. And of course, they are static friendly seats too. So you may get shocked to death if you're not careful. But at the Chrysler Center, Veda and I sat down and went, oh, these are so comfy. Because they had padding on them. They had padding and they were soft. They were still, it was still like stadium seating. Like, it was not luxury seating by any means. But compared to the day before at Ford Field, it was amazing. And and then another huge difference between them. And what I don't understand, and I'm trying to figure out who I can write about this issue, is at the high school individual finals, they insist there are 25 mats. 25 mats going, okay? Versus the Chrysler Center for the Big Ten Championships, there's only 4. But you have a difference of well over 1,100 wrestlers that they need to get through in 2 days versus 140 wrestlers that they need to get through in 10 days. So you only need 4 mats, 1 for one and 25 for the other. But at the high school championship, they insist on announcing over the PA who's on deck on which mat. So with 25 mats, it is this constant noise over the PA. So-and-so and so-and-so on deck for mat 14. I mean, just this constant. And it's nauseating, and it's so much noise, and it's overwhelming, particularly for autistics, neurodivergent people. It can be way too much. At one point, I even shut down. I had to put my hood on and try and just black things out because it was just so much. But this is what doesn't make sense to me, and why it is absolutely absurd that they insist on calling out who's on deck. First, everybody has smartphones and uses this program called Track Wrestling, which is literally what every single mat is connected to a computer that's connected into Track Wrestling. So everyone has their smartphones. You look this up on Track Wrestling and you can see for the next, who's currently on the mat, who's on deck, and who's in the hole. All right. So you can see the next 3 bouts, who's there and on which mat. Second, there are monitor screens all over the place, including 2 enormous ones inside of the arena. There is no missing which mat you are on, when you're going to be up. I mean, there is no missing. And it's all divided. It's 5 different divisions, and each division has 5 mats. So you even know the 5 mats that you're limited to. So it is absolutely absurd and completely unnecessary to be announcing who's on deck for every mat. Guess what they don't do at the Big Ten Championships? They don't announce who's on deck for each mat. It's wonderful. Oh, it was so nice. So when you would hear from an announcer, it would be about things that actually related to a bout that was happening on the mat. Or they'd be discussing a referee call or something like that. Things that I feel should be over the PA system at a wrestling tournament. So anyway, yes, the Chrysler Center is much, much, much better. But it's kind of jumping ahead a little bit with things because on our way to the Chrysler Center, not only were the roads still a mess, but then I also noticed when I started my windshield wipers that my windshield wipers were not working quite up to snuff anymore. From 29 miles and nearly an hour and a half of snow and ice just pelting down on them. That was a lot of weight that was being put on my windshield wiper blades. So I went, oh, this isn't good. But they were still functioning. I could still use them. So, okay, something that I'll have to address when I get home. Well, then when we are on the street, before the street that you turn onto to park at Chrysler, suddenly this massive 5-6 inch thick sheet of snow and ice slid down from the top of the roof of my car, right onto the front of my windshield, which no, it's not possible to clean all of that snow off before you head out. I couldn't reach it. It was not possible to do. So as soon as that happened, I went, oh, this could be a problem. And lo and behold, I could not start my windshield wipers at all anymore after that happened. But at that point, it's okay, there's nothing I can do. Let's just get to the Chrysler Center. So we did that. We stayed for the whole first round of wrestling. The guys on the team did phenomenal. How many? I think 8 of them won their first bouts. I mean, it was a really awesome, impressive it was a really good result. And I think it was 8 out of the 10 of them did win their first bouts, including my daughter's favorite college wrestler. His name is Will Luan. She thinks he's just, best college wrestler out there. She is real decisive about these things. And then after that first round of wrestling got done, by that point, I'm tired. I'm hungry. I'm worried about the windshield wiper blades. And so I said to Veda, you know what? Let's head out now. Let's go find something to eat. Plus, she had a book crisis. She had packed along a very large book to read, but she ended up finishing it Friday night. And for her, it is actually truly important for her to have a book because she uses it as a coping mechanism. It's a way that she can handle the sensory overload as she will read her book. So when she finished her book much faster than what she thought she would, she was panicked about not having another book because it's how she helps regulate herself. So I said, let's go get some food and we'll find you another book. Let's just head out now. So that's what we did. And I had looked up online where a supermarket was that I knew we'd be able to get a book at. I didn't want to go the route of trying to find a bookstore because that would give her way too many options. We didn't have time for that. So we went to a supermarket that is super common around here called Meijer, spelled Meijer. And before that, though, we did go to some steakhouse where we both had chicken. But we inhaled our meals. We were so hungry and we were so kind of out of it. I felt bad for our server. She kept trying to make conversation with us, but we were just focused on eating and figuring out what was going on at the high school state final, how Ian was doing. So, we're on track wrestling and then we're watching his bouts live and we were so focused on everything else that I was just not in a very personable mood. I tried. We left her a nice tip and everything. But we inhaled our meal. Neither of us had, Veda maybe had like 2 chicken tenders she took with her after that. But otherwise we ate everything, including she had like 4 rolls, like 6 other large chicken tenders. I think she probably had fries with hers and maybe a salad. We ate a lot of food, but it felt so good. We were so hungry. And so then after that, then we went to Meijer. She picked out a book. She was debating between 2 and I leaned toward the one because it was much larger. And I thought, just in case, this book, I'm pretty sure will get her through the rest of the weekend. The other book, I'm not so sure this is going to get her through the rest of the weekend. And she agreed that the one I chose, that was a good book because her old teacher, who now teaches at the high school, has the rest of the series in her room. So she can borrow the rest of the series. Oh, good. So let's get that book. Then we stopped and we got gas, and I thought, well, I should probably check in with my husband, and I should probably let him know that my windshield wipers are completely busted. Which I didn't want to do. And in part because, of course, he texts back like, hey, that is not okay. Like, you have got to try it, and you need to go get those fixed right now because you can't drive home with them broken, blah, blah, blah. And, he's not wrong. But I'd also looked at the weather, and I felt pretty confident that Sunday it was going to be dry and clear the entire way home, but still, he's not wrong about it, but it is early Saturday afternoon. I'm in a city that I'm not familiar with. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. Nobody has parts. You can't get parts anymore on a Saturday afternoon. So I'd started calling around already. And that's essentially what they said. It's like, well, yeah, you can bring it in, but if you need parts, we aren't going to have those till Monday or Tuesday. And I'm thinking, but I can't be stuck on the other side of the state until Monday or Tuesday. Like, that's just not an option. So we had a bit of a stressful exchange between the two of us. But then what I eventually did is I thought, I think I think the problem could be just that they're misaligned from having all of the weight of the snow and ice on them. And if that's the case, from my research, it should just require, maybe rescrewing some bolts, and that would be about it. And then it would be fixed. Well, I had spoken with a pretty nice guy at a Goodyear shop, and he had said, you can bring it in and I can at least diagnose the problem for you, but I won't be able to help you with anything today. But he was the kindest person that I'd spoken to on the phone. So I thought, well, let's go with him. And he was close to where we were, only a few miles away. So I took it over there, and he does come out and he takes a look, and right away he says, oh, it's the transmission. I mean, not like the engine transmission, but the transmission for the wipers. And he's like, yep, that's your problem. And I'm thinking, oh, crap. Okay. And then he starts popping some stuff off. And then he says, oh, well, hold on a minute. And he has me move my car closer because he didn't want to spend so much time outside, I guess. And he comes out with a couple of new bolts and, not like a screwdriver type thing. Whatever those things are called. Me and my power tools we're like this. Yeah, totally. But he comes out, and next thing I know, he's like just replacing a couple of bolts with my windshield wipers and tightening those up, much like what I've read online about, fixing alignment issues with windshield wipers. But he doesn't tell me that's what he's doing. He just is like, yeah, I think maybe you got lucky. And he's like, okay, so go ahead and try them. And now they work just fine. But he never told me that it wasn't actually the transmission and that I was actually right, because I had mentioned that I think maybe it could just be a misalignment of my blades when I first walked into the shop. I had said that to him, but but making it very clear, but I have no idea. I know nothing. So I don't know if he just didn't want to look like he was wrong. Anyway, I didn't care. I absolutely did not care because he solved the problem. And to make it even better, I asked him, what do I owe you? And he's like, nothing. Just have a safer trip home. Oh, thank you. Thank you. He spent about 6 minutes of his time and 2 bolts. And I will forever be grateful to that man. It was what I desperately needed. So after that happened with my blades being fixed now, and we had full stomachs, I felt much better about the rest of the weekend. And indeed, it did go much, much better for the rest of the weekend. In the end, U of M did pretty well. They ended up placing 5th this year out of the 14 schools, which really is not bad. Last year, they did have a first place win, but last year was just also a very different year. They had some pretty impressive people on the team last year, including one wrestler who transferred to Michigan for his last year that he was eligible to wrestle because he wanted a team win. And he looked around and said, hey, if I transfer to Michigan, and by the way, he was a phenomenal wrestler. But he looked around and said, if I transfer to Michigan, odds are really, really high that I will be able to secure that team conference win. And they did last year. But 5th place is still very, very good. I really almost feel like I need to do another WIP and chat to be able to cover the rest of our weekend, because it was just so eventful, and I will just keep talking and talking and talking. So I think what I am going to do, guys, is just that. I think I will try and come out with another WIP and chat sooner rather than later, which I know is definitely kind of different. Having essentially like a part A and part B for my WIP and chats, but I think that's what I'm going to do. Otherwise, this is just going to be too long and I will never, ever be able to upload it. Because in addition, of course, to just the wrestling weekend, there has been other things going on that whether you want to hear about it or not. I don't care. I'm going to share it anyway, I guess. So let's go back to that community question, which was, what was your favorite Sesame Street character? Please let me know in the notes below. And again, very much appreciated anytime you like my videos, anytime you do interact in the comments, anytime you share any of my content, subscribe to my channel. That is all very, very much appreciated. And not just by me, but by all YouTube creators, particularly your small-time YouTube creators like myself. It's very helpful and very, very appreciated. So please try and remember to do those things. Otherwise, I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to finish up this little section of Oscar before I continue with the rest of my series on diamond painting for the beginner. And then at some point I will come back again and I will offer you another WIP Chat sooner rather than later. All right, guys, so that's going to cover it all for right now. Like I always say, please practice kindness. You never know what someone is going through. I mean, for all you know, they have not had dinner the night before. They're in a strange city and their windshield wipers have broken and they are feeling sensory overload to the extreme. You just don't know what's happening. Much like my server at that steakhouse restaurant, she was still very kind, even though I was not very personable. Be like that server. Just be kind. And I hope that you are shown that same kindness in return. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you again real soon.